Inside of the concentration camps of the Second World War, there were many different execution and torture methods used upon prisoners to inflict terror and fear. Every day at roll call, a number of prisoners who had allegedly broken the rules and policies of the camps were brought to the gallows in a large square where they were condemned in front of thousands. The idea of this was to terrorise the other inmates, but camps such as Mauthausen utilised the environments around the site to condemn people. There was a large quarry found at the camp, and the SS guards threw many prisoners off the cliff face into the quarry below to their deaths. There were also sadistic doctors who carried out barbaric human experiments, and the inmates knew that if they were selected for this treatment, then there was a very strong possibility and probability that they would never make it out of the clutches of the SS doctors alive. But one of the deadliest parts of the concentration camps, which is often forgotten about, is the whole point of the camps, which was to exterminate as many prisoners and people as possible through the labour and work they were forced to do. This became known as Extermination Through Labour, and under this strict policy, millions of people succumbed to their deaths, being driven to this by the SS guards, who would also execute. Welcome to the Fortress. Today we look at the Extermination Through Labour. As always, to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. When the concentration camps opened, many of them were originally sites where only political prisoners were held. The earliest camps were aimed at introducing forced labour as a means of re-educating those who had different political ideas to the Nazis, as well as instigating punishment. The prisoners inside these early sites were forced to perform work which was very strenuous, but was considered low yield for the Nazis, such as working on farmland. But during the Second World War and before, the concentration camp system expanded a huge amount, and the camps which were built around specific sites such as quarries, to make sure that prisoners would be working in these areas, and then the Nazis would extract a huge amount of profit based off the forced labour. But the term extermination through labour was one which was not really specifically used by the SS within the camps. Signs hung above camps such as Auschwitz that told prisoners that hard work made freedom, but Goebbels did use the phrase, as did Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS. The phrase was used during the Nuremberg trials, but it was said to have been a more mild way of saying annihilation through labour, as prisoners were slaughtered through the work they were forced to do. But inside the Nazi concentration camps, the SS persecuted many people inside of Germany and the occupied lands. This included women and children, and thousands of people found themselves held inside different sites, including those who resisted the Nazi regime. Most of these prisoners who were held in the early camps did not survive their ordeals, and inside the sites there was a horrific amount of violence and torture. Guards would not hesitate but to shoot an inmate who was deemed to be working not hard enough, but inside the Nazi camps, the working conditions were brutal and ruthless, and it was categorised by lack of food, water and sanitation, and prisoners were given no medical care. The violence of the SS guards, as well as the torture and execution, was also a huge contributor to the death tolls within the camps, but the working conditions were known for their brutality. Prisoners had to work very long days, sometimes 12-hour days with no rest and very little food, to the point where they then starved to death. The Nazis and the SS inside of the sites kept very close records on the prisoners, and they admitted prisoners into the camps based off their utility and usefulness when it came to work. When prisoners arrived at camps such as Auschwitz, they would be subjected to selections, in which if they were deemed not fit enough to work, they would be then sent straight to their deaths inside the gas chambers. These prisoners were taken straight from the trains to their deaths, and there was a high percentage of women and children who were slaughtered as soon as they got to sites such as Auschwitz. The work that the inmates were forced to do was aimed at wearing them down, but also by bringing in profit to the Nazis and the Reich. The concentration camps were also using forced labour for the German war effort. Many of the prisoners were forced to work on aircraft parts for German fighter aircraft that would later take to the skies fighting the Allied air forces, and some inside different sites were even forced to make parts for Hitler's wonder weapons, such as the V-1 and V-2 rockets and bombs. These projects were very secretive, and they were kept under very close guard. But as the war turned against the Germans, the SS often forced prisoners to work even longer hours, to make more supplies, as they believed this would help turn the tide of the war machine and the Germans towards victory. The driving of prisoners then led to more deaths. One senior SS officer wrote of the brutality of the work in the camps that the camp commander alone is responsible for the use of manpower. This work must be exhausting in the true sense of the word in order to achieve maximum performance. There are no limits to working hours. Time-consuming walks and midday breaks, only for the purpose of eating, are prohibited. He, the camp commander, must connect clear technical knowledge in military and economic matters with sound and wise leadership of groups of people, which he should bring together to achieve a high performance potential. Inside of the different concentration camps, there were thousands who died, and because of the work they were forced to conduct, the life expectancy of the inmates would be just a matter of months. People died on the spot during their workday, and the work they were forced to do was practically a death sentence. There were around 25,000 prisoners who died inside the IG Farben factory within the barbed wire fences of Auschwitz, and prisoners died from either the exhaustion, or the lack of food or water, or the diseases that spread quickly around the camp. If a prisoner as mentioned could not work, then they would be sent to the gas chambers, but there were some guards such as Irma Grese, who was known for shooting prisoners with her pistol if they were not working hard enough. Also, another woman inside of Auschwitz, Johanna Bormann, patrolled her work detachments with her dog, and she used her pet to maim prisoners who did not complete enough work, and this was an animal that was trained to kill. Her cruelty led to many prisoners' deaths, and subsequently later her own execution. One of the most ruthless camps was Mauthausen, and as mentioned, this had a huge quarry where the prisoners were forced to work. Every single day they were forced many times to walk up and down the stairs of death, a huge flight of steps which were known for their brutality, as the SS guards drove the inmates up the steps quicker whilst they were forced to carry blocks, sometimes as heavy as 50 kilograms. The quarries were also extreme during winter and summer, as temperatures fell as low as -30 degrees Celsius, but they could also get very blisteringly hot in summer, and this led to high death rates. Prisoners weighed on average about 40 kilograms, and they would have their calorie intake reduced as the war went on, leading to prisoners lasting just a matter of months. The cruelty of Mauthausen was literally extermination through labour, and the SS guards also executed people by throwing them off the cliffs of the quarry. They even threw the hats of the prisoners into the boundary of the camp, where they would then be shot by other guards in the watchtowers, as well as deliberately pushing inmates into high-voltage electric fences. This showed a lack of regard that the guards had for the prisoners. These were just workers who were there to serve a job before they were killed by the work they were doing and the conditions. At Mauthausen, the life expectancy towards the end of the war was just 3 months. Of course, it was not just the SS concentration camps that utilised extermination through labour to slaughter, but also make profit. Inside of the Soviet gulags, this was also used, and the death rates were very high in these, as it's claimed that 1.6 million people died inside of this system between 1935 and 1956 within Soviet lands, and 900,000 of these deaths occurred during the war years as food supplies fell very low across the nation, and the prisoners became the lowest priority to feed. Also inside of Maoist China, the prison system there utilised forced labour to reform through labour, and the mortality rates within these camps and the mortality rates within these prisons was known for being rather high. In one, for example, 300 prisoners died per day working in one mine. Extermination through labour was a brutal and barbaric policy of exploitation in which the guards of these camps and prisons had zero regard for the lives of prisoners. They were there to do a job, and that job was to drive these men, women and children to their deaths, but to do this by maximising the amount of work that the prisoners were going to do. It was a horrific execution method and policy, and resulted in the deaths of millions. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.